My wife of nearly 3 decades had an affair when my son was a teenager. I lied to him about it. They blamed me for our alienation. And I only found out the reality through my daughter. I'm in my late 50s and have been married to my wife, Isobel, for a very long period. We're talking nearly 3 decades. I've always thought we had a fantastic life, but recent events have made me reconsider everything. I entered this nation as an immigrant. My main goal was to earn enough money to care for my parents. They made significant sacrifices for me, and I wanted to provide them with all they desired. Unfortunately, they no longer exist on this planet. I worked hard. Even in college, I was a bit of a nerd, constantly focused on my studies and future. I wasn't very into the party scene. I eventually launched my own company, which has been profitable. I started it before Isabel and I married, and it has grown gradually over the last 25 years. We have 2 children, Jason, the oldest, and Rachel, our daughter. Jason was always my little pal as he grew up. We were quite close. Rachel arrived roughly 8.5 years after Jason. It was a pleasant surprise. I recall holding Rachel for the first time and feeling an overpowering need to protect her. I would do everything for her. Just after Jason was born, Isabel had some health issues. As a result, she was frequently admitted to the hospital. I took over most of the child care. I wanted her to relax and recuperate. My company allowed me to work from home most of the time, so I became a full-time dad. I was present for all of the important moments. Jason's first steps included teaching him how to ride a bike and stitching him up after a fall, teaching him how to play basketball. Isabel appears to have become resentful of my strong relationship with Jason. She'd make comments like I was hogging him or that he was overly connected to me. It always seemed unjust because I was simply trying to be a good father and help her out. She never spent much one-on-one time with him. I even attempted to persuade her to take him out for ice cream or simply go for a drive, but she always seems unsure of herself. She'd say she didn't know how to connect with him and would always invite me along. Jason never mentioned to me that he and his mother were not close. I suppose children don't always discuss such topics. Then Rachel came along. Like I mentioned, it was unexpected, but we were pleased. Isabel had previously stated that she would love to have a little replica of herself. Rachel ended up with Isabel's blue eyes and my blonde hair. Having a second child was much easier in certain aspects. We learned from our errors with Jason, so there was less stress overall. I felt differently about having a daughter. I'm not sure how to express it, but I felt more protective of Rachel, more cautious, I suppose. I was concerned about Jason and Rachel's 8.5-year age disparity, but I should not have been. Jason was an excellent older brother. He was constantly looking out for her, watching her sleep, and playing with her. They were very close, which was fantastic to watch. Even from the start, Jason had a sweet spot for his younger sister, who adored him. They do everything together, including creating forts in the living room and playing computer games. It touched my heart to see how well they got along despite their age difference. I really couldn't have hoped for a better bond between my 2 children. So, how did Isabel and I come together? To be honest, the narrative is a little messy. The first time I saw her was at a college party. She was completely inebriated. I felt she was lovely, but not someone I would ever have a chance with. I assumed she was way out of my league. We met again at another party. This time she approached me. She asked me to dance. We didn't actually dance. More like shuffled around, laughing a lot. It was enjoyable, but I was still unsure about her. Isabel represented everything I wasn't. She was intelligent, confident, and a total extrovert. She was not afraid to speak her thoughts in front of a large crowd. She was always sending me these clues. These signals indicated that she wanted me to ask her out, but I did not. I was not the sort to go on a date just for fun. I had my aspirations, and I figured dating her would be a diversion. I considered it a waste of time. Then, after we'd met a few times at different parties, she cornered me. She directly asked me why I hadn't asked her out. I was honest with her. I told her it would be a waste of time because she was always partying, whereas I was focused on my education and future. She advised me I needed to unwind and have fun, that I was spending too much time studying. She made some valid points, I must admit. But this is when things get difficult. Isabel had an alcohol problem. It became evident quite quickly. It was as if she had 2 personalities. A couple of beverages. She was lovely and entertaining. However, if she had too much, she transformed into a whole different person. I saw myself calling her Miss Jekyll and Hyde. There was one really awful night in a bar. We were all rejoicing. This establishment had a cheap drink special early in the evening. Isabel became quite drunk. She collided with a server, and alcohol spilled all over her clothing. She had just erupted. She began yelling at the server, yanking her hair, and using really foul language. The server was horrified and repeatedly apologized, but Isabel refused to let it go. The manager approached and asked us to leave. Isabel's friends, rather than calming her down, began encouraging her. One of them even broke a glass. I paid for my beverages, and Isabel separately. Isabel was still ranting, demanding that the server pay to clean her dress. It was a mess. The police were eventually called, and the entire group was detained. Their parents had to bail them out. It was quite embarrassing, and I was infuriated. I couldn't believe how she had behaved. It was an overreaction to a little accident. After the entire bar event, I decided I was done with Isabel's party pals. They began contacting me, calling me unfaithful, and claiming that I was not a good friend to Isabel. They practically excluded me from any future parties. Honestly, I was fine with it. I did not want to be among folks who behaved that way. However, Isabel felt compelled to apologize to them. She thought we should all band together and encourage one another. I flatly refused. I warned her that if my parents had to bail me out of jail, they would be furious. I come from a very different background, where such kind of behavior is simply unacceptable. Isabel didn't quite get it. She came from a different background and believed I was being very severe. She couldn't understand my point of view. There was a huge contrast between us. After that, I stopped attending parties with her and her friends. Fast forward to after graduation. Her friend circle began to drift apart, which was difficult for her to accept. I acquired a job in another city. Isabel insisted on moving in with me. She claimed she'd be the ideal roommate, as it would help her focus on finding work and getting serious about life. That didn't precisely happen throughout the first 6 months. I paid for everything: rent, bills, groceries, you name it. She was not contributing at all. I even asked her to just make dinner. I worked all day. She struggled even with that. Most of the time, she would simply sit on the sofa and watch old dramas on television. I attempted to get her to get out of the house, go to the park, and possibly join a gym. She said she was depressed. I felt awful, but I knew she had to do something. I finally had a real conversation with her about the amount of money I was spending. I informed her that I couldn't keep supporting both of us. It was placing a tremendous pressure on me. She ultimately acquired a job, but then she began spending money recklessly. It looked like if she was bored, she would go online and buy perfume and makeup. I lost count of the number of boxes sent to our door. All for her. It was one thing after another. It seems like as soon as she started producing money, she found ways to squander it as well. It was frustrating since we were not saving while Isabel was spending. I was saving. I was always responsible with my money. I saved enough money to buy a decent automobile. It was a major purchase for me. When Isabel saw the car, she asked to examine my bank accounts. She couldn't believe how much I'd saved. It was as if a switch had flicked in her head. Suddenly, she began discussing investing her money and becoming more responsible. She actually quit buying so many worthless items. She eventually learned how to save. To be honest, I was relieved since I could see a positive change in her. I've chosen to propose. We became engaged, but before we married, I had another ambition. I wanted to establish my own business. I've been planning this for a while. I quit my solid, well-paying career to take the plunge. I had saved enough money that I no longer needed to rely on Isabel for financial support, which was crucial to me. Those early days of launching the firm were difficult. Isabel was supportive. When I was stressed or upset, she listened to my emotions. Starting a business was quite emotionally draining for me. I'm a perfectionist, which made things even more difficult. I had a difficult time letting go of control and delegating responsibilities to others. I wanted everything to be flawless, and it was difficult to trust others to execute things the way I wanted. We got married when I thought the company was stable, and the business continued to develop after that. It did exceptionally well over the next 25 years. I was now able to provide for my parents in the way I had always dreamed. Isabel became a stay-at-home mother after we had Jason. Given my job and her postpartum health difficulties, it felt like the best option at the moment. We made the decision collectively, yet it made her more financially dependent on me. Jason's life began to alter when he became a teenager. It was the usual mood swings, wanting to spend more time with his pals, hiding himself in his room, and listening to music. He simply stopped hanging out with me as he used to. It was an expected part of growing up, but it still hurt. I sensed a widening separation between us. I tried to be supportive, though. I would remind him that I was always available if he needed anything. Rachel, on the other hand, remained quite close to me. She was always thrilled to see me when I returned home from work. She ran to the door to greet me. I used to bring her tiny things, like a teddy bear or flowers, and hide them behind my back to surprise her. Seeing her face light up was the highlight of my day. I wondered whether Jason was jealous of the attention I paid Rachel. I never intended to make him feel excluded, but I could understand how it could appear that way. Children do not always grasp these concepts. I tried to be there for Jason, even though he was pushing me away. The main issue, however, was Isabel. She plainly favored Rachel. She was often pointing out how much Rachel resembled her, how they shared the same personality. It appeared like she was neglecting Jason, or at least not paying him the same level of attention. I attempted to talk to her about it and encouraged her to spend time with Jason. She'd dismiss it, saying he needed his space and I was overthinking things. They barely speak to each other. Isabel and Jason made small talk. Nothing meaningful. She didn't appear interested in developing a genuine relationship with him. And if I tried to encourage them to chat to bridge the divide, Isabel became protective. She would accuse me of supporting Jason and undermining her authority. It was disheartening because I was only trying to help them connect. I wanted them to have a healthy relationship, but she made things tough. It felt like she was purposefully pushing him away, and I couldn't figure out why things grew worse with Jason. He started talking back to Isabel, which was unusual for him. He began sneaking out at night to drink with his mates. Then there was the DUI case. He snatched my auto keys without authorization and was apprehended by the cops. Fortunately, it was his first offense, and they only handed him a warning. I was infuriated. I gave him a strong lesson about how dangerous that was, and how he could have hurt himself or others. Isabel, for some reason, protected him. She stated that young people deserve to have fun from time to time, just like she did when she was younger. This led to our family's first major fight. I couldn't believe she was being so lenient with something so severe. She accused me of being overly severe and out of touch with teenagers, which only made me angrier. It seemed like she was absolutely undermining me and supporting his risky actions. After that, Jason simply shut down. He informed me he preferred to be left alone. He declined to go to treatment, claiming he didn't need anyone's help. He became belligerent, talking back to both of us, particularly Isabel. The school began sending home reports about his incomplete assignments and disruptive behavior in class. He seemed like an entirely different person. I tried to talk to him about what was going on, but he refused to open up. He would either remain silent or say something dismissive to persuade me to leave him alone. It was quite frustrating. Around this time, I began traveling more for work. My company was booming, and I needed to be on the road frequently. Looking back, I realize I wasn't as present as I should have been. Maybe I should have made more of an attempt to communicate with Jason, even if he was pushing me away. I wish I could have done something, held on to him, and removed whatever was upsetting him. I felt helpless as I watched him spiral out of control, unsure how to intervene. Then came the night that would change everything. I had just returned from a work vacation. I stepped into the house and could hear Isabel and Jason yelling at one another. It was quite loud and unpleasant to hear. I ran into the living room, which was in full disarray. There were shattered glasses and plates all over the floor. Jason stood there, cursing at Isabel. He expressed his hatred for her. I have never heard him speak like that before. I went between them, hoping to defend Isabel even though I had no idea what was going on. That's when Jason turned against me. He labeled me a coward and a deadbeat dad. Those remarks definitely rattled me. I didn't get where it was coming from. He claimed our marriage was a fraud and that we had lied to him his entire life. He stated he was tired of pretending we were a wonderful family, but he was disgusted with us. He declared he no longer wanted to live with us. Isabel interjected, but not in a helpful manner. She severely warned Jason that he was too young to make such charges against our marriage. She was effectively telling him that his feelings were invalid due to his age. She wasn't attempting to figure out why he was so furious. I attempted to calm things down. I informed Jason that name-calling would not fix anything. I asked him to apologize, but he declined. He scoffed at me and insisted that he meant what he said. He blamed me for everything. He even suggested I did not deserve to have children. Hearing my own son utter those things to me made me feel dreadful. I was extremely surprised. I had no idea what had triggered this level of rage and contempt. And then I did something I never imagined I would do. I hit Jason because I was angry. I have never hit someone in my life. I regretted it as soon as I did it. Guilt and shame had suddenly flooded over me. I took a step back and couldn't believe what I had done. My hand truly trembled. Everyone was shocked. Jason immediately gripped his cheek and lurched backward. Tears welled in his eyes. He said nothing. He just ran upstairs. He contacted Isabel's parents and his grandparents. They came over really fast. They realized something serious had happened and chastised me for punching Jason. However, they appeared to recognize that the situation was tricky. Jason would not even look at me. I apologized, but he ignored me. He left with his grandparents. He did not even say goodbye to Rachel, who was attending a friend's birthday celebration at the time. After he went, Isabel gave me a half-hearted embrace and told me to apologize to him later. Like she didn't realize how serious this was. I tried to contact Jason every day. I went to his grandparents' house, but he locked himself in his room and refused to see me. I texted him several times, telling him to talk to me. He broke off all contact except to receive money from me for his studies. That was all the contact we had. Isabel told me that the disagreement was about Jason's homework and his disobedient behavior. She described it as a regular teenage argument that had just gotten out of hand. I initially believed her, given Jason's recent behavior. But then I began to have misgivings. Jason's emotion was so strong that it made no sense for it to be about homework. When I communicated my concerns to Isabel, she became enraged. She accused me of constantly doubting her and never trusting her judgment. It was another battle, and it just made things worse. I felt totally lost. Jason received a full scholarship to college. It was an excellent school, and I was pleased with him even if we didn't talk. I texted him to congratulate him and apologize again for everything. His retort was brief and nasty. He begged that I stop sending him messages. He claimed I was no longer his father. It was as if he was repeating what he had said that night about my being a bad father. It broke my heart yet again. The next few years were difficult. I missed Jason all the time. I was always thinking about him, wondering how he was and what he was up to. Rachel was the only one who was still in contact with him. She would give me periodic updates, but it wasn't the same as speaking with him directly. She was aware of everything that had happened that night, including the fight and slap. She understood how deeply I regretted it. I believe she was the only one that actually did. We didn't discuss Jason as a family. Isabel never mentioned him. And I avoided bringing him up because it always resulted in an argument or a prolonged quiet. Then, on Rachel's birthday, things changed. She spent the day with Jason at an adventure park. I was glad they were spending time together, but I was also slightly concerned. I stayed up late, waiting for her to come home. I wanted to make sure she returned safely and honestly. I was expecting to see Jason, even if only for a moment. Isabel was already sleeping. This was not rare. She frequently went to bed early, leaving me to manage things. When Rachel arrived home, she appeared concerned. I asked her how her day was, and she merely shook her head. Then she asked me a question that utterly confused me. "Dad, do you know the true reason Jason left?" She said Jason missed me. This startled me, given his last text. But then she stated that he told her something she found difficult to accept. She suggested I read my old emails, which Jason had sent me years ago. At first, I assumed she misunderstood. I checked my Gmail account, the one I used all the time, and there was nothing there. Then I remembered this pretty old email address, which I used largely for Facebook. I hadn't used it in some years. I barely remembered the password, but I was able to regain the account. And there they were. Jason sent dozens of unread emails throughout the years. When he was having a bad day, I began reading them, and it was like reading a horror story. They were filled with his anguish, his hardships, and his sense of betrayal. The key thing, this is what made my blood run cold. Jason came home from school one day and saw Isabel in bed with someone else. He was furious, unsurprisingly, and yelled at her. Isabel threatened him. She warned him that if he told me, it would lead to our divorce. She claimed we had an open marriage, and that I was having affairs on work trips. All of them are complete lies. She made him feel as though it was his fault, as if he were the one who was wrong. He was disgusted, confused, and heartbroken. He had been going to therapy. And, after talking to Rachel, he realized Isabel had lied to him. But he felt awfully guilty. He had abandoned me, mistreated me, and now he didn't know how to face me. He regretted not opening up earlier. Reading the emails felt like a punch after punch. I experienced shock, anguish, betrayal, and then sheer wrath. My entire life, including my marriage, felt as if it had broken apart. I realized how badly Isabel had cheated me. How much time I'd wasted with Jason due to her falsehoods. I do not know what to do. Read it. My life is terrible, and I feel silly for not reading my email earlier. Everything could have been avoided if Jason had spoken with me straight. There were no explanations for the idiotic emails. So, what shall I do? Reddit update. So, Reddit. It's been a while, and I intended to update you sooner but didn't have enough time. Anyway, here's the update. I couldn't simply sit there with this information. I needed to confront Isabel. I woke her up and questioned her bluntly. Why would you lie to our son about something so important? Initially, she denied everything. She claimed Jason was making things up, and that he'd always had issues with authority. She was attempting to discredit him, to dupe me into believing her version of events. But I had proof. I'd printed out Jason's emails. I showed them to her. Faced with the proof, she couldn't maintain her denial. But instead of apologizing, she began to minimize the situation. She claimed it was a one-time mistake, that it was meaningless. I was infuriated. I mentioned the years of alienation from Jason and the emotional devastation she had caused. I responded, "You made me believe our son despised me for something I did." In an angry state. "All along, it was your falsehoods that drove him away." She eventually broke down in tears. She admitted to the affair. She claimed it happened while Jason was a teenager, and she provided the identical information that Jason had included in his emails. She explained that she lied because she was frightened of losing me, that she exploited the deception to silence Jason. It was entirely about her. She refused to tell me who the affair was with, but I honestly didn't care at that point. The damage was done. It did not matter who it was. Then she said something just. I don't have any words for it. She said that she'd never liked Jason. She explained that she had always wanted girls, which was another reason she couldn't bond with him. I simply stared at her. How can you say that about your own child? How could you intentionally favor one child over another? I asked her such questions, but she didn't have any answers. She just sat and cried. There was no regret or awareness of the suffering she had inflicted. I couldn't help but feel angry when I looked at her. I told her that I can't look at your face without seeing red. I said, I hate my wife so much. After that confrontation, there was no turning back. I knew right away that I wanted a divorce. There was no doubt in my mind. I told Isabel to go immediately. She pleaded with me to reconsider, but it was useless. She had fully violated my trust, and there was no healing the harm. Rachel witnessed the fight in the aftermath and pieced everything together. She was furious at Isabel. She refuses to speak with her. I contacted Jason. The first needed to speak with him to explain things further. He was guarded at first, which is understandable, but I eventually broke down. I told him how much I missed him and felt sorry for everything. He started to become emotional as well. He admitted that he regretted leaving home that night. He wishes he could go back in time and apologize to me rather than fleeing. I feel terrible for my son. He suffered greatly as a result of Isabel's lies and manipulation. She arranged the entire incident solely to conceal her affair. For years, she blamed me and the slap for Jason's difficulties. It was a trend, with her constantly shifting the blame and never accepting responsibility. I realized she never missed Jason or reached out to him. She manipulated the circumstances to make me feel guilty. I wish I'd learned the truth earlier. My two children, Jason and Rachel, are on the same page. They both believe I should divorce Isabel. They do not want anything to do with her. And, frankly, neither do I. I'm starting the divorce process, and it will be messy, but I'm ready to go on with my life. I'm finally starting to restore my relationship with Jason, which is the most important thing to me. Here's the next story. My name is Norman Franklin. I was fortunate to be the second born. My parents named my older brother Benjamin, whom he despised. As you try to figure out what makes me tick, I'll spare you some time and work by reviewing my life. Such as it is. I grew up to be the most innocent, unprepared, air-breathing sap in the world. At least that is how I feel about it. I currently work as a salesperson. I married Betty, a foxy little blonde, and there's no excuse to put it off. She's the one in my life. She removed the cork and tapped into my consciousness. She then set out to drain me of my soul, and anything else she could fit into the toilet of my life. Until a fateful day many months ago, I believed I had the ideal marriage. I admitted I was naive. The marriage had been going on for 4 years, and everything appeared to be great to me. As previously stated, I am a salesman. I'm one of those men that will not accept no for an answer to anything. I don't sell vehicles or anything remotely related to cars. I sell advertising, including radio and television ads. If you sell an automobile, the buyer will be able to touch something. He can put his hands on the steering wheel and drive off the lot. I am not that man. I sell air. I sell time. It may sound mystical, but it's actually rather cool. I'm giving you the opportunity to shout your product's name from the rooftop. In a sense, your product or name becomes imprinted in the void, in the dark recesses of our minds. You cannot eat or drink it, but you will benefit from it. Many of you complain that what I do irritates you to no end, but that TV or radio program would not be free without my efforts. For me and the guys I work with, the routine is fairly easy. On Thursday afternoon, all 5 members of our sales team meet in the office to receive our marching orders for the upcoming week. On Friday, we check and verify that all of the work and travel for the previous week have been completed, and that every customer can see or hear their advertisements in the format they desired when they purchased them. On Fridays, we focus on the finer details of our endeavors. That week, on this particular Friday, I finished early So a coworker named Mike Johnson offered to join him for a drink at a local bar. Mike is a large black man. That is truly a wonderful friend. When I arrived, he had my drink ready for me. We spoke for a few minutes, saying nothing vital. When I began telling a story about one of my clients, he interrupted me in mid-sentence. Norman addressing me by my full name is unique for this person. He typically calls me Norm. I have to tell you something essential, but I'm not sure how to say it. He searched the tables surrounding us, as if to ensure he wasn't being heard. Do you know my wife now? Still displaying signs of being unsure how to proceed. Last Tuesday, Mel went out to lunch with a girlfriend. Good. What does it have to do with me again? Mike's expression became strange, as if he was hesitant to say anything. Mike, explain to me what the problem is. As previously said, Nell was out with a girlfriend when she saw Betty. I interrupted. She saw my wife, Betty Duck. This is difficult to say. Yes, your wife, Betty. She was eating lunch with a guy Nell had never seen before. Suddenly, my lungs stopped working. It could not have been Betty. Last Tuesday, she volunteered to accompany the girls' softball team to Habsburg for their tournament. You don't have a girl on your softball team? You don't have any children? No. The coach invited her to assist because she had played softball in college. When I told him my wife wasn't where she said she was, I tried to prove him wrong. No. You are wrong. She was eating lunch with another guy at the 58th Street Diner. Mike argued, quite vehemently, and Betty claimed they were more than just friendly. At that point, he turned over his phone, which had been resting on the table, and there, in crystal clear color, was a couple seated in a booth, immersed in a kiss. But then he swiped across the computer, revealing a second, more damning photograph. I had no question that I was looking at a clear and indisputable photograph of my wife. Mike made it much more heartbreaking when he enlarged the image, to reveal the look of lust in my wife's eyes. The bar went silent. The sound of the jukebox had vanished. My friend told me something that completely stunned me. My ears went silent without saying a word. I drank my drink with a single move and stood to depart. Before I left my friend, halfway to the door, I turned to thank Mike. For the life of me, I'm not sure why I felt compelled to thank him, but I did, and the blackness gave way to dazzling light. I suppose everyone has a specific area they go to when confronted with a problem in their daily lives. When I was a toddler, my favorite location was my closet. Now that I was, or thought I was, a man, I needed to find a replacement for Crystal Palace. Mine was a tranquil hideaway on the shores of a little lake outside of town. Without even knowing what I was doing, or where I was heading, as my head cleared, I found myself in my quiet place. I found myself sitting in my automobile, gazing as if in a trance at the lake's calm, wind-whipped waves. My thoughts were filled with pain, fury, disbelief, and finally reality. Was I to be blamed? What did I do to make her desire another man? Was I already out of her life? There needed to be a cause. There simply had to be. But what was the reason? What? 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 Tears had made their presence known, and I could not seem to stop them. I had worked so hard to do everything a husband should do for his wife, love, family, and future. Following more than a few minutes of self-pity, I took my phone and dialed a number from my contact list. I have an issue, Dad, and I need your aid. My father was never a man I would turn to for assistance in the past, but he had been through a similar battle, and I needed his advice. Initially, the line was silent. My father was known for facing adversity, so I thought he could help. When I told him about my meeting with Mike, I could practically see the look on his face, despite the fact that he was so far away. Norman, are you certain? Are you sure? Without a question. There is an issue. That's when I took my time explaining to him what was in the photographs. I even offered to email him copies, but thank goodness he declined to see them. After a while, he soothed the dragons that were battling over me. He even made me smile and chuckle at times. So, after emotions were under control, the call ended. I had a better concept of how I should proceed. The first spare minute I had, I began making the necessary contacts. I didn't call anyone who didn't have a reason to know what was going on in my life. Then I waited. I waited to see if she was indeed the woman I married. The genuine woman. Maybe she was a cheating asterisk. She was using me as a prop to help her game. As long as I was unaware of her activities, she was free to do whatever she chose. She flew around, going from one bloom to the next, from one man to another. In love with her? No, that was not doable. I experienced a headache several times. I spent late nights in my home office writing proposals. I even told her one weekend that I was attending a seminar in Richmond to learn a new sales method. Really? I just drove to the adjacent Holiday Inn and left. I know you won't believe me when I say I didn't drink any alcohol the entire time. During this time, I did not go out with friends or coworkers. I didn't even go see a movie. My father instilled in me the importance of maintaining a clear mind. If I made one mistake, one misstep, I would ruin the entire thing. Those calls I made. The first call went to a young divorce lawyer. My father stated that she managed his last divorce. He had three. After a longer than usual meeting with her, I contacted an investigator. She recommended it. I handed everything over to my lawyer and her comrades. During this period of waiting and uncertainty about what my wife was doing or would do, I became anxious. But it turned out that life continued. For 3 or 4 weeks, my daily routine remained the same. Okay, the love part has totally ended. I wasn't even about to choke my chicken. Not once, but twice, I was taken aback by a particular benefit. My sales have improved. I expected everything to rush and jump into the CR* paper. But, surprise, surprise, my day-to-day sales increased by approximately 20%. When I'm with a client, I usually put my phone on silent mode. This day felt different. It felt like there was electricity in the air. You know how you feel before the big super-duper lotto drawing? You're convinced you have the winning ticket. You get the first number, and your heart races ahead of you. Well, it was one of those days. I was watching a client sign the solid line at the bottom of the contract when I noticed a tune coming from my jacket pocket. I apologized to my customer and took a few steps back to accept the call. The conversation was brief and sweet. My lawyer asked me to come to her office. She had everything ready, and her detectives would be there too. An even bigger smile almost broke my face. I shook hands with my customer, offered him my promises, and Elvis departed the building. Just as my ass struck the front seat of my automobile, all of the 100 or more steps of the lost process came pouring back. What if it is not true? What if he adds an asterisk? I started crying again. Then I got angry. I was angry at myself. If it was all a mistake, and now that I'd wasted a month of my life, how would I explain to my wife why I'd behaved so poorly? It was time. Our lives. We would not be able to live again. It was gone. And for what? A silly photo of her doppelganger with a man she didn't know. I gathered my thoughts while sitting in the parking garage of my lawyer's office building, watching automobiles come and go. I felt terrified. I was suddenly scared it was real. My wife had another man in her life. Was I prepared to face it? Was I ready to start over? Did I want to be like my father, jumping from one bed to another? From one lady to another? I finally made it up the 8 floors to my lawyer's office, and when I entered, I noticed that the receptionist's normally happy countenance was not smiling. The austere expression gave me pause, but I walked to her desk. "You are welcome to enter, Mr. Franklin. She is waiting for you in the meeting room." As I approached the conference room's open door, I saw 3 people. 2 were poring through some papers, and the third appeared to be standing there waiting for a reaction to what the others were reading. The first few minutes were spent on standard introductions, after which I was instructed to take a seat. My lawyer gave the floor over to the investigator, who briefed me on his findings. It was not good news. If I were a rock climber on El Capitan in Yosemite, I would let go just before reaching the top to see if it was enjoyable to fly. The first photograph showed my wife being held from behind by a stranger. She was standing in the midst of a crowd on a dance floor somewhere. She was speaking on the phone. I remembered her and her girlfriends having a girls' night out. I remembered she called me at 9:00 and said they were having a good time. So they were planning to stay for a few more hours. She made it clear that she was safe, and that I should not wait for her. I was a naive jerk. I never doubted her words, but the following photographs demonstrated how easily I might be deceived. Her arms lay on the shoulders of an older, mature man whose hair is growing gray around the edges. They were kissing. He wasn't just kissing her. His hands were grabbing her cheeks like an asterisk, and raising her salaciously into his body. The investigator resumed his story about my death. He mentioned her departing with her new companion and another woman. The other woman was from the area, and we had met at a few gatherings. I noticed our neighbor holding on to a younger guy, who was grasping her like an asterisk. As they exited the bar, then the scene changed. There was a pool and a hot tub in the backyard of a house that was clearly owned by the older man. The next image shows 2 men relaxing in a hot tub with beverages in their hands. The following image depicts my wife and our neighbor, standing naked close to the hot tub. My body appeared to be frozen in place. I don't think I could breathe, even if I wanted to right now. Right now. For the past 4 years or more, the truth of my life has been clear. I had placed my complete confidence and affection in this woman's singular body and soul. She was my first lover, and the first woman to offer herself to me so completely. How could I have been so foolish? At my request, the photo stories were followed by 4 hours of recordings of my wife engaging in depravity. including encounters with various guys, and 3 visits to our neighbor's home for a girls-only tryst. The photographs of my wife, however, were the most upsetting aspect of the story. Her buddy and hubby. This was a man I knew quite well. And here he was, entwined with his wife and me. I could take no more. After the investigators left the room, my counselor explained all I needed to do to leave this sham of a marriage. There was an enormous amount of information. I was equipped with transcripts and audio evidence. My lawyer explained which parts I could use in court and which parts a judge would not accept. The copy of a dissolution of marriage was already prepared with a comprehensive and honest division of assets. The money for the lawyer and the investigators was taken from an account put up for a surprise honeymoon-style vacation. On our 6th anniversary, the money came from bonuses and extra work. She knew nothing about it. I came prepared with copies of everything I needed. I sat quietly in my car, reflecting on the emotional hammering my body had just received. The only query that sprang to me was one that raised doubts. Was there any chance I could stay in this bizarre world she'd created? When the solution was plain, I pressed the start button and began the long drive home. I arrived home later than usual that evening. The words and images were burnt deeply into my brain cells. These were images I'd never be able to forget in 100 lifetimes. There were phrases and promises that no man or woman could ever fulfill. Nonetheless, they seemed so simple to say over and over. They were no longer words, but a hymn to some awful fiend. When I arrived, my wife was waiting for me at her customary position. She sat at the edge of the kitchen island, her eyes obviously drawn to the photos on her laptop. The garage-to-kitchen door closed slightly louder than usual. It had little impact on her demeanor. "How was your day, baby?" My wife's remark sounded the same, and so did the question. I'd heard it many times before, but today, I heard lies that exposed the artificial smile on her face. I looked deep into her eyes, searching for the loss of her trust and truth, but all I saw was a woman's body enveloped in the arms of a man. That wasn't me. Then there are the sights of her and our neighbor in the clutches of her little toy. "What's happening? Is anything wrong?" she asked. Somehow, words became stuck in my throat. I wanted to yell at her. I wanted to seize her and squeeze her life out, exactly like in the breathless struggle I had fought and lost. I wanted her to feel the pain and emptiness I was experiencing, but I was certain I was exactly who she believed I was, a frail, simpering shadow of a man. She'd transformed me into her C***. Cold. She had pulled my soul out in a calculated and painful way. As I approached her, her smile, which had before been sarcastic, changed to one of inquiry. "What is wrong?" Still silence. I placed the tablet with all of the proof of my embarrassment on the granite top of the kitchen island. "What does it feel like to turn your hubby into an asterisk, known as the laughingstock of your sexual mind?" "What are you talking about with the asterisk?" She appeared weakened by my determination. "This package includes the report of the private investigator I hired to track you. The tablet stores video of you and your interactions with other men and women, for the purpose of transforming me into an asterisk." "Cool. This only covers 17 of the previous 24 days' activity. I can't believe how long you've been doing this to me, and our marriage. It just makes me wonder whether I ever was your husband. Was I simply a stopgap till you found something better?" While speaking, I was selecting images from the folder and arranging them on the table in front of her. She attempted to hide her face and begged me to stop. "You need to hire an attorney and have him contact me. We can schedule a time to go over everything." I stood and turned to leave the room, which I had considered my home. I paused in the doorway, turned, and returned my gaze to the ghost of a woman whose tears were as false as her love for me. "If you were so unhappy, we could have done it without all the anguish and suffering." One change appeared to take an extremely long time, following that evening with my wife. But now she was officially my ex-wife. The world did not cease turning. If it had, I would not be shocked. But the daily routine remained. I got out of bed, went to work, and returned home to what I call home. Actually, it was a little one-bedroom apartment surrounded by college kids who were a few years younger than me. Weekend parties lasted until late at night, which was fine with me. I didn't need the rest, anyway. It's not like I was in a hurry to go out on the streets and find someone else to shatter my heart. I admit I was feeling lonely. I could only accept so many free dinners from well-meaning coworkers. I must admit that I found at least 50 things that could be grilled and made absolutely bland. It was Thursday night. The local theater was screening a retrospective of a female star who died 60 years ago. I opted not to pursue a career as a movie mogul. Driving aimlessly past a diner, I drove into a spot and parked my old piece of shit automobile, which my ex-wife believed was beneath her station in life. I went inside and discovered a booth across the desk. In the seat, as if discarded by some uninterested party, was a card reading alcohol massage. I ordered what I believed would meet my nutritional requirements, but that blasted card kept nagging me. I hadn't felt love in what seemed like decades. I wasn't sure whether I'd ever remember how to do it. Silly me, I thought. It's just like riding a bicycle. Oh, shit. The last time I rode my bike, I smashed into the side of a car. I smiled to myself. I finished my dinner, paid the waitress, and left a generous tip for nothing more than the nice memories I had during the lunch. The major surprise occurred when I returned home and cleaned out my pockets. I found the darn card. I had no idea how that got inside my pocket. Was this some sort of Freudian slip? Don't overthink it, Norman, I thought. The next morning, I brushed off the idiocy of the night before and went about my Friday program. This had been a particularly productive week, so my mood was upbeat. But as I concluded my Friday catch-up duties, I found myself alone in the sales office. If you want to make a lot of money, you must work long hours. I spoke with disgust for my coworkers' lack of dedication. Exactly as those words freed my thoughts. I wanted to be exactly like them. I wanted to have a family. I wished to have someone waiting for me when I entered the house. I wanted to feel arms wrapped around me. Most importantly, I didn't want to be alone in my bed in the morning. Driving home that evening, I strolled through the line outside the theater, waiting for a couple of hours to see that long dead star come back to life. I went through the drive-thru at a hamburger restaurant. For some reason, I didn't want burgers and fries tonight, but that's all I had on the menu. When the door to my flat closed, I was met by the sound of happy music, or a party outside. I sat in my bar. I unfolded the burger wrapper and found that card beside it. This was going to be the last of me. I took up the card and resolved to finally let someone, other than my right hand, give me the relief I needed. I needed to say hello to the sanity that had left me so long before. I needed my intellect to connect with the actual world, even though I knew little about it outside of my employment. I pushed the first few numbers on the card. Is there something wrong with me doing this? Was I a pervert who needed to get his fix somewhere, where folks like me never go? As I glanced at the last few numbers, I felt a sense of shame. Grow some balls, chicken. *T. I pressed the final numbers on my phone somewhere in the megaverse. There was a voice, an angelic voice, that answered Jenny's call. How can I make your day better? After a moment and a sense of humiliation, I said, I'm sorry, but I've never done anything like this before. Sir, that is all right. We frequently encounter this problem. I saw you phone from a cell phone. Are you linked with the police? I ask, because nothing we do would lead you to believe it is illegal. Still unsure how to go. That is okay. Just forget I called, sir. How can we help you? I got this card at a diner and thought it would be good to have a massage. The phone in my palm shook along with the rest of my body. How soon would you like to get your massage? Just hearing her voice was comforting and reassuring. When I mentioned today, she asked for my address and phone number. She only needed to ask a few more questions, and I was told when to expect a visit. She gave me the name and cost of the service. I was expecting a woman named Kelly. After I agreed to all of the terms, we ended the call. I sat back, wondering what I had just done. Honestly, I had no idea. A shower and a beer later, there was a not too subtle knock on my door. After a brief moment of doubt, I pushed the door handle down, and when it opened, I was immersed in the clouds of heaven. Standing in the doorway was the stunning beauty of an angelic, black-haired fantasy. She introduced herself as Kelly, and when I declined to allow her inside, she stepped back. Are you Norman? Oh yes. I'm Norman. I waved her in as if I were Sir Walter Raleigh, bowing before the Queen. I'm sure her first impression was of a jester preparing to give up his life. However, when I glanced into her eyes, she smiled. It was most likely because she had recently met a fool or someone who resembled a fool. But her smile was the best treatment I could have taken. Please come in and have a seat. I pointed to a couch on the opposite wall from the television. That's when I was confronted with reality. She extended her hand and said, Do you have anything for me? Oh, the money. I apologize, I forgot. I went to the table at the end of the couch and took an envelope containing the money I agreed to have for my guest. There was a fast discussion of the encounter's restrictions, such as no kissing or any contact that could leave a mark on her body. Then I gestured again toward the couch. Don't you want me to be ready? No. I suppose I should get to know you better. I foolishly suggested. You understand that you have already paid for my services. Yes, I know. But you must understand that I have never done anything like this before. Furthermore, you are stunningly attractive. I want to learn more about who you are. The expression of disbelief was almost funny. Norman? That's your name, correct? She waited to allow me to respond, but before I could, she spoke, smirking. It would be better if we just went about our business. And I left. Well, this is how I see it. You see, from my perspective, I sell time advertising. I compensated you for your time. I should be the one who decides how we spend that time. Norman, I am getting to like you. So, how do you want to spend our time together? We sat on the couch together for more than an hour. I told her how my life had been flipped upside down, and she told me how she got involved in the entertainment industry. Then there was a loud and insistent beating on my door. Shocked. Oh, God. I forgot about Barry. Who is Barry? Barry is a big man who drove me here, and if I don't return on time, he'll shatter my legs, arms, and everything else. You should sell advertising. She grinned and moved quickly to open the door. Barry didn't enter my apartment until he was convinced Kelly was fine. He nodded, as if he had comprehended her whispered explanation. A second later, she was standing at the door, staring back at me. Please call me again. Norman, you're a fascinating guy. A fascinating individual. She blew me a kiss before turning and disappearing. Later that evening, I went to bed and resolved to do for myself what I had hired Kelly to do for the first time. With the image of that gorgeous, soft black hair covering my face, I had one of the most pleasurable experiences of my young life. As expected, I contacted the magic number again Saturday afternoon, and the person on the phone stated Kelly was not accessible on weekends, but they could schedule her for the following Tuesday. When Tuesday evening arrived, I was prepared for the massage. The door opened, and there she stood, as if a magic carpet had transported her there for my delight. She followed her routine as if reading from a script. I know she could see I was annoyed. Then she burst out laughing. I wanted to see how you'd react. I had you going there for a minute. Again. Her smile illuminated the room. I feel like I owe you. I thoroughly enjoyed our last visit. I still need to grab your money. You know, I don't get to keep anything. So, we better get started. I do not want Barry to come after me. I commented, enjoying her attractiveness. She turned and disappeared through the bedroom door. When I stepped in, she was standing on her knees at the foot of the bed, astounded by her beauty. When my mouth closed and blood began to flow again, I was astounded by what I saw. I made my way to the bed and was told by Kelly to strip. I did exactly that as quickly as I could. A time later, I was reminded that I wasn't supposed to kiss her on the mouth, but I couldn't respond because I felt a condom being pushed into place and her lips speaking in my ear. Norman, do not approach me. Avoid me. I owe you a good time. Avoid me. Kelly was on my speed dial. At least once per week. We would meet at my apartment. We did not have love every time we met. We went to the movies once to watch a Japanese film with subtitles. I don't know about you, but after 30 minutes of attempting to follow the plot, I simply closed my eyes and listened to the background sounds. Kelly had no idea what the difference was. The biggest surprise for me came after the movie. Kelly stayed in my bed all night, and I never noticed the condom being put on or taken off. However, when I awoke the next morning, I noticed the unopened wrapper on the nightstand and felt the warmth of her mouth, tenderly bringing my body to life. I met her at a restaurant around 2 or 3 times. Then came the main event. It occurred on a Friday night. I had arranged a date with Kelly, and we were about to leave my house to attend a happy-go-lucky party at a club outside of town. The drive took more longer than I had anticipated. The prospect of a surprise, as well as a hand caressing my crotch from time to time, helped to make the travel comfortable. Our trek concluded in a luxurious area with manicured hedges, as tall as the stone walls they encountered. There was a gate that required a code to enter, as well as what appeared to be a long driveway leading to an enormous stone mansion. Don't you think you should tell me your wonderful secret? Kelly, grin. Please wait. I think you'll enjoy this. She shrugged her shoulders. If you don't, you can return home. With the car parked and the two of us strolling arm in arm toward what appeared to be an immense and magnificent wooden door, I could feel Kelly's excitement radiating. She had the appearance of a youngster waiting to see Elvis at the pearly gates. I nearly expected her to let go of my arm and run inside. After passing through that majestic door, we reached a promised realm of love and depravity. Opposing musical notes echoed throughout the environment of Sodom and Gomorrah. A gatekeeper welcomed us into the darkness, acknowledging Kelly with a hug and kiss that was already present. The lovely brunette spoke to Kelly over the loudness of the excitement in the room. Where is he? Kelly asked. He has already gone downstairs. Kelly slipped her touch from my arm to my hand, pulling me to a door that led to a stairwell. Come on, Norman. I have someone I would like you to meet. I think you will like him. I became lost in the swirl of everything going on. Couples were making out all around. Next to them was a group of 4 or 5 barely clad people conversing, as if about the price of eggs. Kelly, I'm actually not sure why you brought me here. I guess I need to leave. No. You need to meet this dude. And if you decide to leave, I will not stop you. But you will miss out on a lot of pleasure. I could not believe it. She begged me to stick around. She raised her arm in the air. Matt. She yelled at the tall, sandy-haired blonde man. Kelly drew this man's attention when he was distracted by two other lovely women. He approached us and brought his woman buddies with him. Hello, baby. Is that him? He inquired, appearing slightly impressed. Kelly told me a lot about you. What the hell was he saying? How did Kelly know this guy? When I saw the expression on her face, I knew I was about to find out. And it did not take long. Norman, I want you to meet my hubby. This is Matt, my husband of 12 years. The shock occurred instantly. I'd been seeing Kelly for a long time. At least it felt like ages. She had me absolutely baffled. She never mentioned having a husband, and she had broken every norm with me. That was very clear in the beginning of our relationship. I was very naive. Once again, the true self was revealed. Kelly recognized my discomfort right away. She grasped my arm again, and her eyes showed her distress. Matt, I suppose I need to explain what occurred to Norman, who was following me like a confused puppy dog. She led me to a quiet location away from the commotion. She sat me down in a large cream-colored cookie chair and looked into my eyes. Norman, I thought you were prepared for this. Maybe I was mistaken. What do you mean? You believed I was prepared. What are you ready for? Kelly was sad when you initially approached me. You didn't even try to have love with me. We spent the entire visit talking about you, as well as about me and my life. I could not tell you that I was a married swinger. You assumed I was an escort, but I was not. My husband and I have been living what we call the lifestyle for a few years. One of our favorite games to play. He'd put a card in a diner seat, or a cab, and wait to see if anyone called. We'd almost given up on this endeavor when you called. But what about Barry the monster driver? The first night? Kelly, grin. There was no Barry. He was merely seeking for his lover when he knocked on the wrong door. So that was simply another falsehood. Oh, God. Norman. I'm not sure who went into your head and messed it up, but you are one of the kindest men I've ever encountered. And without a doubt, you are the greatest lover I've ever had. You must confirm that I paid you. If you choose to stay here for a while and take advantage. She grasped my face. Please stay and give yourself the chance. Later that evening and into the night, I figured out what she was talking about. I discovered that closing my eyes to what was going on around me was the same as ending my life. I was merely closing my eyes to the real world, which was moving through time and leaving me behind. Over the next 2 weeks, I transitioned from the safety of my apartment outside to the world that was at my fingertips. All I needed to do was open my door and see what was outside. There was a very lovely young blonde woman by the pool who was open to my advances. I made an effort to get to know her, and before the moon had completed its full cycle, I was immersed in the beauty and tenderness of her body pushed against mine. Her name was Candace. Yes, I call her Candy. I still see Kelly on occasion, but Candy is always ready to take advantage of Kelly's ability to transport another lady to the summit of the Love You All mountain. Happily. I'm no longer a K*Gold. Kelly likes seeing me properly manscaped, but this is simply for her advantage. She is not interested in trying on another man. She stated it took too long to find the one she hooked, and she's not going to screw it up. It's great that I, or rather, we, don't have to be oblivious to the truth in the end.